All right. Well, you know what? I am proud of this show. And part of the reason is because we have great guests joining me this morning. Sunil Sehgal is here. He is the managing partner with TechArcis Solutions, here for Tech Tuesday, of course. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Dana. Thanks for having me.
It is Tech Tuesday. And, you know, there's nothing really more important than QA and testing, really. Right, Sunil?
I would agree that.
I mean, it's your company, obviously, that's doing that. But look, Sunil Sehgal is hanging out with us this morning, managing partner, easy for me to say, at TechArcis Solutions. And we've just seen with Samsung how easily things can go wrong when testing is not done the way it needs to be. And I think, you know, back in the early days of development, you know, testing was like a couple of developers would write some code and then they'd say, hey, you guys test this to whoever else, you know, in the company. And people would sort of just hack away at it for a few minutes and go, yeah, it's good, and send it out. That's not the case anymore. I mean, now there's a lot of tools and a lot of experts in this space, correct?
That is absolutely correct. And I think like the way testing needs to be focused on has totally changed. So what our belief is that, you know, quality and convenience, you know, drives customer success.
Yeah.
So behind that, you know, is like the way the software is developed and the product is developed, that's kind of like totally changed.
Yeah.
And the way people are doing that, you know, it's like they are doing it in a very iterative fashion,
Yeah.
which basically means, you know, like people are adopting Agile and DevOps, those type of the mechanism.
Right.
So nevertheless, you know, like quality is a very important factor. It has to be done, but the way it is done is totally changing. And I think like that's where a lot of the innovation comes into play, a lot of, you know, automation comes into play. And the way testing needs to be done into this whole Agile mechanism is totally transforming. And that's absolutely a very, very key focus area, because at the end of the day, you know, it's like if there is no quality and the bugs goes out, and, you know, as we saw things with Samsung, as you were pointing out, and
Yeah.
there are numerous other examples.
I mean, obviously, in that case, it had more to do with the hardware testing and the battery testing versus the software testing. But nonetheless, all of it really needs to be checked. And I feel like, just as a consumer, and I'm sure you can speak to this too, we go on websites all the time or download apps, and there's all kinds of bugs. I mean, I feel like it's just sort of part of the way it is. And that might be fine when you're trying to buy a sweater,
Right.
but it's not fine when it's software that is, you know, for the operating room or for your vehicle, or, you know, you can't have that stuff failing.
That is absolutely correct. And I think like traditionally what has happened, like as you were pointing, like, you know, testing was kind of like coming at the tail end of the process.
Yep.
Right. And a lot of the time it was kind of like also an afterthought as well.
Yes.
So the way like we look at this particular thing, and, you know, we are experts at this whole quality engineering, it has to be embedded as part of the process, right? It has to be brought, you know, upfront when things are actually being developed. And at the end of the day, you know, it's like if bugs go out and there are defects, nobody likes it. Everybody hates it. And that definitely means, you know, a fundamental shift
Yeah.
in terms of how you look at this whole quality engineering space.
All right. So TechArcis, you guys are specialists in QA and software testing. But so when your clients are sort of outsourcing to you to do this, how do you integrate? Like, how do you sort of become part of their process? Is it all through automated tools?
So actually what happens is like, you know, we get involved and are the chosen technology partners for our clients. So we basically help them so that they succeed with their clients.
Okay.
And, you know, it's like they are able to like roll out their products faster, better, and cheaper. So our work definitely gets involved in 3 stages. One is, you know, like when things are being built. So that's when the software, the solutions, and the products are being built.
Yep.
And at that time, you know, it's like our role is very, very embedded into that whole process of the software development. So we kind of like start from day one, as I was talking about, you know, like shift left and early start.
Yeah.
So that's where, you know, it's like we do a lot of the automation type of the things in terms of making sure that we are not waiting on the code.
Right.
The second scenario starts to come, you know, it's like when things actually get deployed. So at this particular point, you know, like this is nothing called as a standalone solution, but it has to integrate with a lot of the other products, a lot of the other application, and it becomes an ecosystem. So things like end-to-end testing, performance testing comes into play. And here, one of the example is that we use robots for automation, especially when you were talking about the fintech scenario. So there, you know, like a lot of the manual work happens in terms of who's going to swipe the card,
Yes.
who's going to insert the card, especially with the EMV standards.
Yeah.
You know, now with the mobile pay, you have to put your card, you know, on top of the point of sale machine.
Yeah.
So all those things, you know, like which are very.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second, though. You're saying you have robots that do that?
Yes, absolutely. We
That
have done
actually like put the card at the car. Okay,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
is cool. Why didn't you bring pictures of that?
I
I
have-
guess we're on radio, so
No.
that might be why.
Those pictures are in my phone. I can show it to you.
That's so cool.
So we actually like did the combination of the software automation and the robotic automation in this whole fintech chain
Wow.
to kind of is like test this whole EMV rollout. And that's the end-to-end testing. And
Sunil Sehgal hanging out with us this morning from TechArcis Solutions, and he just said robots, so I'm very happy this morning. But do you guys also have, is it like, do you put consultants out at companies sort of working hand in hand with the developers, or is it sort of all automated and on the phone and those kinds of things?
No, nothing is on the phone. Like everything is basically, coexisting or co-locating with our clients' teams.
Okay.
So that's how, it's like we work where we are embedded in their teams and actually, it's like working hand in hand. And then there are also like work that happens, like in our other locations in India and Australia.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, it's like we are an integral part of the team.
Okay. So there's some remote and some people that are sort of really right there with the client.
Correct.
At their site.
And we are all about technology. It's like at the end of the day, it's kind of like technology and people both are required to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, Sunil, one of the things you talked about, and I know this is the case, is the whole agile development world and how things are constantly changing. And it's sort of, to your point, I think back in the old days, it was like you came up with some software, you wrote it, you tested it, you put it out in the field, and you left it out there for however long until you were ready to do another big release. Sure. And now there's like these little releases all the time, right? So does that mean testing is sort of like ongoing, integral every day and never really ends?
That is absolutely correct. It's like testing is done whenever there is a change.
Yeah.
So whether you are developing a new software or a product or you are tweaking it.
Yeah.
And that is, a never-ending process.
Right. Every tweak, and that's going on constantly.
Absolutely. So whenever there is a change, testing is involved. But the big thing is testing has to be embedded as part of the process.
Yeah.
And the main thing, as you pointed in the Agile, typically those cycles are 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And if in those 2 weeks, you are not automating testing, think about it. It's like, how can you do it?
Yeah.
So a lot of the time we see that people, get, okay, it's Wednesday night of the second week and now you test and Friday morning it's due, nothing gets done. So I think the lessons learned there are that, like you start from day one and use technology.
Yeah.
It's not an old fashioned automation that I'm talking about. The main thing here is progressive, and we have developed tools and technologies for scriptless automation, which is primarily geared at people who have no coding skills.
Oh, okay.
And no coding skills. So that's a very, very big thing. Because in the ecosystem, not everybody is a developer.
Sure.
So there are BAs, there are PMs, there are other people, and we want to like include them into this whole process of the product and the solution building.
So I want to talk about, we only have a couple minutes left, but I want to talk about sort of the some of the newer technologies, because obviously that changes the game when you're having to look at testing, as you already sort of talked about, sort of the credit card readers and all that. But what about Internet of Things? Because we hear so much about that now, and that sort of changes the game too. There's so many more things interacting with each other now. How do you test all of that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point out, because some of these things like Internet of Things, they are real.
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
It's here.
And it's definitely going to impact everybody, all of our lives. So at the end of the day, when you start to basically look at it in parts, there is a role that the carriers have to play, which is like, AT&T, Verizon's and the big people.
Yep.
And then, it's like from the endpoints, there are a lot of these data devices which will sit, in the cars, or you talk about the containers and all. And then there are technology and the platforms in between.
Right.
So our role comes at, all those different layers where we have to make sure that the end-to-end systems will work and also the individual pieces. So we have a very, very critical role to play, and we are, like very committed and very deep into this whole testing for Internet of Things. And, we have published a lot of the white papers on that as well. And then the other hot areas are like connected cars you talk about.
Yes.
And mobility. Mobility is very big.
Yeah.
And we have our own mobility lab where about like 300 real devices are there.
Oh, wow.
And those are kind of like at the forefront of this new waves.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, back in the day, when you were just starting to develop applications for the web, it was like, oh, you had to worry about people using different browsers. And now it's different devices, different browsers, different carriers. All of that affects what the end user is experiencing. And so if you're not testing for all that, and you remember this, people used to say like, oh, well, it works on Internet Explorer, but don't worry, it doesn't work on Safari. Just use Internet Explorer. You can't do that anymore.
Absolutely.
Customers aren't willing to do that. They want it to work where they want it to work.
It is all about customer at the end of the day.
Yes.
And no matter who you are, big company, small company, medium company, nobody can control what the end customer will do.
That's
so
right.
You have to be ready for whatever they want, whenever they want.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about any device, any browser, any operating system, we have to be ready for that, and also for the real life conditions.
Yeah.
Because it can be raining outside, their battery may be low, their signal may be low. So you can't test, like in your lab in the perfect environment and not worry about the client situation.
I
And
just had
that's
like
a recipe for disaster.
I just had like an image of you standing outside in the rain, like with your poor, sad, dying battery phone, trying to test for somebody. That's what you would do for your clients. I know that's true. All right, Sunil, we're basically out of time. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, we need everybody to test their stuff. No bugs, no more bugs. We will post a link to all things TechArcis on our show notes page at biz1190.com/Dana Barrett. More Tech Tuesday to come. Don't go away. We'll be right back.